I think it's a really great project transforming an old, worn-out dirt bike into a capable road and trail machine. But we've been working on this thing for a long time.
Too long.
And I don't know how much more you guys can take. So today I'm going to try my best to just knock this thing out, just get it done. The last time we were working on this, before the Weed Whacker, which has been delivered to its new owner, and before Jen's bike, I ran into a little snag on the electrical system. When I try to turn on the turn signals, everything blinks, not just these.
You could just leave it alone and call it the police special.
How about we try to make it right? The reason I think this is happening is that there's no way to store electricity on this machine. The generator makes power and it sends it to all the lights. If another load is introduced, it robs power from the other lights and they go dim. The only way I can think of to fix that is to add a battery. I wanted to avoid that because of the extra complication, but I don't see any other way. This is a battery that is 12 volts and 1.3 AHs. I think it will have enough juice so that I can turn on the flashers without dimming the headlight. I'm trying to keep the video interesting. Let's go look at some electrical diagrams.
I think you need to try harder.
This is basically what the electrical system on the KDX looks like. The generator creates power and sends it to the electrical load, which is represented by this light bulb and the chassis ground. There's also a voltage regulator that keeps the voltage from getting so high that it blows out the bulbs at high engine RPM. I need to change this in a couple of ways. We need to replace this AC voltage regulator with an AC to DC rectifier. I also need to disconnect the chassis ground from this end of the generator and send that lead to one of the AC inputs on the rectifier, and the other side of the generator coil will go right here next to it. And then this lead will go to the positive side of the battery, and the negative will go to ground. So long story short, first thing we need to do is get behind the flywheel and disconnect this wire from the ground and send it up to the wiring harness.
I'm so glad you're doing this and not me.
I haven't done anything yet except draw. It's hard explaining that stuff, especially when I barely understand it myself.
Yeah.
Okay, on this generator, one side of the lighting coil is connected to this wire, which goes up to the positive leads of the electrical components, and the other side, which is connected to the chassis ground, is right here. This is the one we need to disconnect and then reattach to this new black wire that I've already fed through this tube, and then both sides of the lighting coil can go into the AC input side of the rectifier. The reason I'm going to all this trouble is that you cannot store AC voltage in a battery. You need to convert it to DC first, which requires the magic module.
Do you have the magic module?
I've got the magic module.
Okay.
It just hasn't been revealed yet.
Okay.
So we'll take this off and then feed it down here to the underneath. Cut this off. Oh, touch this, Jen. It's shaking. It knows that its life is in danger.
I'll protect you. Come see.
Come back here. So we'll try to make this connection. One chance here. If I nick or burn off any of the insulation on this lighting coil, it will ruin it. So far so good. Now the heat shrink tubing. Okay, let's put it back. I don't know if this will work. From what I've read, the factory generator on this machine is barely adequate for just a headlight and tail light. Now I'm adding turn signals, instrument lights, a brake light, and I'm converting from AC to DC, which costs some efficiency. But the only way to know is to try. Okay, back together again. Before I do any more rewiring, I want to hook everything up and make sure that the generator still works as it did before, because I might have cut a wire or smashed something and ruined the generator when I was working on it. Okay, we're looking for headlight, tail light, and when I turn the flashers on, Christmas morning. Alright, checks out. I think we can move along. Next step is to install the rectifier. AC power comes in through these two, and DC power is ejected right here. This part wasn't designed for a KDX 200, so I had to modify it a little bit by extending these wires and adding this plug, which I stole from the voltage regulator on one of my parts bikes. My plan here is to remove the existing voltage regulator and put the rectifier in its place without getting in the way of the seat or anything else. Okay, that will work.
Kind of crooked, is it?
Undo this. This should plug in here. Tank off. And these two to both sides of the lighting coil. Last thing, before we go on to the next boring thing, is the battery. It's going to go right in here somewhere if it works. I'm not going to build a bed for it yet though, because for all I know it'll kick off the covers and tell me I stink, my feet are cold. So what I'm saying is we'll wire it up and just see what happens. This is the positive lead. I'll connect it right here to the main power wire on the motorcycle, and when I connect the ground wire to the negative side of the battery, it should light up. So here's what we're going to watch for. I'll start up the engine, turn on the turn signals, and I really hope that when this turns on, the headlight stays lit up. What do you think?
It'll work.
That's my girl. Will it start?
Yes.
That's electricity! Happy about that. It's still working, even on this little battery. Because it's so small, it'll discharge really quickly, so I'll turn this off. I really appreciate you guys watching me do things like this. I know that connecting wires is not very engaging due to popular demand. And because I appreciate everyone's viewership, I'm going to do something next that a lot of you have suggested to me. I'm going to rip out these conventional front forks and replace them with the blue inverted forks from the parts bike. I really like this setup because it has a lot less underhang below the axle here than there is on the original units. These are much more likely to get you hung up, stuck in a rut. I think I'll just call them 35 years old, no career.
Getting fat.
This front end also has an aftermarket top clamp and handlebars. These are much straighter than what was on here before. These have a really aggressive bend. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to hold them like this or like this. The blue finish is also awesome. This will coordinate perfectly with the seat, ties the whole bike together. I installed the nicest front fender that I have and put on a brand new front brake lever. I've got 3 KDX 200 motorcycles, 3 broken brake levers. The next thing I want to work on is building an enclosure for this battery. I've been messing around with some cardboard trying to figure out a pattern, and I think I have something that will work. If I create something like this out of a more sturdy material, I think it will fit just perfectly right here behind the air filter. I had kind of a failed business opportunity that I've abandoned, but it required me to buy a lot of this ABS sheet plastic, so I have some of it laying around. I haven't worked with this very much, but I think it will be the perfect material to build my battery box out of. So first I'll measure and make some marks on here using the battery as a guide, then cut it out using a hacksaw. The way this plastic works is once it's heated to a certain temperature, it becomes flexible and I can create the angles that I need. I finished up my cuts. Time to bring this thing into the 3rd dimension. To help me make these bends as straight as possible, I've created this device, which is just 2 pieces of metal clamped together with some spacers. And my idea is that I can heat up the plastic, then really quickly slip it in here and make my angle. I'm going to be doing this work outside because when this gets hot, it really starts to give off some toxic fumes.
So do you.
What?
Nothing.
So we'll start off right here. I'll use the heat gun to warm up the plastic, and as soon as it feels flexible enough, I'll really quickly get it into my jig and make the bend.
1 down.
6 or so to go. 5 to go.
Luckily, we only need to show them 1, right?
Yeah, we'll do the condensed version.
Too slow.
No, too small. What am I doing wrong? You're trapped! We'll do a reheat. That's how we do things. On the 3rd try.
That didn't work.
That's a terrible bend.
Crooked?
Last bend. There it is. It's not my greatest work, but it'll do the job, and even if it's ugly, it's hidden under the seat. Nobody is going to see how poorly constructed this piece of plastic is. I've got some bad allergies today. I think it's your flowering shirt. So the battery caddy will sit right here, but to keep it from sliding around, I'll take a notch out of each side of the airbox.
I hope this works, otherwise you've cut up your motorcycle.
I really don't like modifying, cutting factory components. You want to see if it fits?
Yeah.
First, the battery box. Did you hear it pop into place?
I did.
Almost like I knew what I was doing. Now the battery. I call that a success. You remember in the beginning of the video, I said I wanted to finish the motorcycle this time.
Sounds like you're about to not finish the motorcycle this time.
Remember the Corvette? Camera Girl, do you remember the Corvette? I bought the Corvette a few months ago. It had bad paint. I've been sitting on that project because I haven't figured out what I want to do with it. I just put a deal together that's time sensitive that will make that car look a lot better. But I need to move on it now. It requires a little bit of time, a few days worth of driving, a little bit of time. What I'm getting at is I've got the remainder of today to work on the KDX. There's one more bit of fabricating that needs to be done before we really start putting everything back together, and that is installing the gauge cluster, which wasn't meant for this machine. I've spent quite a few evenings alone in the garage doing things like this. I don't videotape that for obvious reasons, but it's not a complete waste of time. This gauge cluster will fit on the motorcycle with only moderate modifications. The major hang-up is that even though the gauges will fit right here nicely behind the headlight shroud, the input for the speedometer cable heads right down into the top of this clamp. I really didn't like cutting the plastic airbox, but the only way I think I can make a speedometer cable work here is to drill a big hole right into this stressed member that holds the handlebars and the front suspension together.
Why don't you just get a different speedometer case?
Just get one. Snap my fingers. That's
how this show works.
Do you want to go into this? I got this because it's a Kawasaki gauge cluster. I got it because the green and purple match very nicely with the green and blue on the KDX. I got this because it's an analog set, so I can adapt it to work with this machine. One does not simply get another speedometer for this application. We're gonna drill a big hole. That looks terrible. It looks like it's gonna break.
Hey.
Tell me what you guys think, if anybody's a metallurgical engineer. I tried to stay away from any of the webbing underneath this clamp. There's a rail that runs right here that I didn't touch, and I also was trying to avoid this area, which is the clamp for the fork. I'm having some whole remorse right now. I'll get my mind right, I'll get back to it, but I've got to quit for right now.
I think this video was a little too wholesome.
Turn it off! Turn it off!
Can I turn it on now?
Yeah, turn it back on. We did that last clip a few weeks ago. Since then, we went on a 10-day journey that took us through 3 states. But we're back home now, and I'm really excited because I've got what I need for the Corvette project, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. It's also good for me to step away from this thing. Sometimes I get so wrapped up in something that's really insignificant that I lose perspective on what's really important. And I think this will work too. I cleaned up and polished around the hole so it doesn't look nearly as catastrophic. And even though I really don't know how much it actually weakened this part by drilling through it, when I compare this top clamp to the original one on the KDX, even with the hole, this one looks much more substantial, especially from the underneath. There's a lot more metal on this piece than on the original. How'd that sound?
Oh, I'm convinced.
It might break on the first ride, I don't know. But I'll know how fast I was going. The cable goes up through here and plugs into the gauge cluster, then down into place. I think that looks like it belongs there.
Kind of reminds me of Johnny 5.
At the beginning of this video, I was hopeful that we could get the motorcycle done. I fell short, but now I'm confident we'll get it done in the next video. The power of positive thinking, camera girl, is 12 volts DC fully charged. Thanks for watching.